Again, thank you for joining us today for the AgrAbility webinar series. My name is Paul Jones. I am the manager of the National AgrAbility Project at Purdue University. And today's topic today is on arthritis and nutrition. Our presenter is Amber Wolf from the Arthritis Foundation Heartland region. And before we get started with the actual presentation, I have just a few basic webinar instructions. As hopefully you've discovered, audio is available either through your computer audio or a phone connection. If you need to check your audio, please go to the Communicate menu at the top of the screen and run the test that's available there. If you need closed captioning, those are available through the media viewer on the lower right-hand side of your screen. You'll have to perhaps click on the arrow next to Media Viewer to reach the captioning, and you may have to enter your name and other affiliation before you can actually see that. If you don't want to see the captions, you can simply minimize that by clicking on the arrow. You may have difficulty seeing all the panels at one time. You may have difficulty seeing the video of the presenter if you have the Media Viewer or other panels open. So you can minimize any of those. You can also expand or contract the size of your right-hand column by dragging on the boundary in between the presentation panel and the other options that you have there on the far right. If you have any questions about the presentation, we ask that you would use the chat option. And again, that's one of the options on your lower right. You do have to expand that to get it to open and then type your message in the box. We ask that you would send that to all panelists. That's one of the choices you should have, and we ask that you would do that so that we can make sure we catch your questions for the question and answer period. Also, if you would prefer to ask your question verbally during the question and answer period after the presentation, you should see a raise hand icon by your name, and you can click on that. And we will do our best to activate your audio so that you can ask your question either through your phone or through a web microphone if you have that. We do ask that you would stick around also for our 4 quick poll questions at the end of the presentation. Those will actually be before the question and answer period. They should only take a couple minutes, and they provide us with valuable feedback about your opinions and your comments that we could use for the future. This session is being recorded and archived on the agrability.org website. Go to the online training link and then click on Archive Webinars. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, again, please use the chat window. If for some reason you're unable to use the chat window, then please use the email address agrability@agrability.org, and we will be monitoring that during the webinar. For those of you who may not be familiar with AgrAbility, our program is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we focus on accommodating issues of disability in agriculture. Every AgrAbility project is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. Currently, there are 20 state AgrAbility projects around the country, and there's one national AgrAbility project, and that's led here by Purdue's Breaking New Ground Resource Center. Our partners on the National AgrAbility Project include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, the Arthritis Foundation Heartland region, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and Colorado State University. If you'd like more information, resources related to disability and agriculture, if you'd like to find out if your state has an AgrAbility project, please feel free to visit agrability.org and explore those options. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Amber Wolf for the body of our presentation, and then I will return after she does her presentation for the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, Paul, for having me today as your webinar presenter, and thank you for everyone who has joined us for this Nutrition and Your Arthritis webinar. We are going to talk today about how overall eating and overall good health can benefit you, as well as some certain foods that can both cause inflammation and can help you fight your inflammation. So as we get started today, just a little bit about arthritis. It is the leading cause of disability in the United States. And at this point, it does affect over 50 million adults and 300,000 children. In fact, the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control, just recently released new data showing that 1 in every 4 adult Americans has some form of arthritis. That number used to be 1 in 5. And that's including all types of doctor-diagnosed arthritis. It could be anything from osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, lupus, or even gout. So as we talk about these things today, please keep in mind that there are several forms of arthritis, and we're not specifically trying to target healthy eating to just manage one of those. There are several ways that these different management tips today can be applied to all of your healthy lifestyles. So the questions that we get very commonly at the Arthritis Foundation and through some of our nutritionists that we work with are, can the foods you eat cause or actually affect your arthritis? And that's incorrect. A certain food will not cause your arthritis. For example, the degenerative forms of arthritis, like osteoarthritis, those are caused by basic wear and tear, overuse, and injury. And other autoimmune forms, like rheumatoid arthritis, are caused by several other symptoms, some of them even genetic. A certain food cannot cause the arthritis pain or the arthritis in your body. However, certain foods can inflame and cause certain symptoms to be more prevalent with your arthritis. But because all of those symptoms are very different, and because everyone's tolerances to different foods are different, it's very important to remember that anything we hear today might work for some of you, but might not have an effect on others. So it's definitely a case-by-case basis as we go on today. The things we're going to talk about today include things like the roles that foods play in arthritis. We'll talk a little bit about how those weight-bearing joints in the body are affected by obesity, the ankles, the knees, and the hips specifically, and how a good healthy diet can help you maintain your weight. Talking about healthy, well-balanced diets as far as supplements and different nutrients that the body needs in certain levels, as well as new resources that the Arthritis Foundation has available for you that are all open for you to request free of charge, either through toll-free numbers or online, or your local Arthritis Foundation office. So again, some of those very specific topics we will talk about an inflammation or an anti-inflammation diet that some of you may have heard about, as well as some of those unproven diet claims with the supplements and resources that are available. As you know, in any walk of life, there are always going to be things that someone might suggest to you that has worked for them. But as far as the Arthritis Foundation is concerned and the FDA is concerned with some of their supplements, there are some that just aren't exactly proven yet, and some that have not been tested for safety. So we'll talk about that more in detail as well. There are 3 main goals for managing your arthritis pain. The number one goal is obviously to control your symptoms. And again, everyone's symptoms may be different. Perhaps your symptoms only follow along the line of severe inflammation or stiffness. Maybe your symptoms go into limited range of motion or limited grip strength. Others may even have nausea or fever or severe fatigue. So finding a way to control your very specific symptoms is important, which is why we always suggest that you work with your healthcare provider or your rheumatologist to make sure that you're covering all of those bases, not just simply working with your diet alone. We also encourage you to get moving, and diet and exercise go hand in hand when it comes to handling arthritis pain. Being active is still very good for a person with arthritis. Now, obviously, some people may say, it hurts too bad to move, and I'm too stiff or I'm too sore to move. And again, there are very personal limits to what you're capable of doing. But in general, the more you move, especially with those low-impact exercises like walking, are proven to show that you have a better control on your arthritis symptoms. In fact, just recently, the Arthritis Foundation released research showing that the more steps you take each day, counted with a pedometer or Fitbit, actually has a direct effect on the level of fatigue that you have with things like rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia. So that's some additional information that you could look up on your own after this webinar today. And then obviously maintaining a healthy weight. Sometimes it's not simply enough to just watch the certain things that you're eating or making sure that you're balancing enough of the good oils and fats in your body, but overall healthy weight in general, whether that's from diet or exercise or supplements, making sure that you know, either through your physician or your own research, what is your target body weight, what is your average body mass index, and how is that going to affect your arthritis? So if you have arthritis, what is causing your inflammation? There could be several reasons that inflammation is occurring in your joints. First off, obesity. The heavier you are, the more weight and pressure you're putting on some of your joints, causing them to become inflamed, just simply because of the stress and strain that you're putting on those joints. Genetics and family history do play a part in inflammation as well. The lack of moderate exercise. Again, think about things that don't get used for a long time, and bolts or doors that might seize up because they're not being used adequately. If you don't have at least a moderate amount of exercise, your tendons and your ligaments will tighten up, your muscles will weaken, and when those things happen, you're also affecting the strength and the durability of your joints as well. So anytime you do use those joints, there's a chance for inflammation to occur. Stress is directly related to inflammation as well as general diet, certain foods that may cause inflammation, and your age as well. So just because you have arthritis inflammation in a certain joint one day doesn't always necessarily mean that it's just simply, the fact that you hurt yourself or you injured yourself or you've had arthritis for so many years. There could be several factors every day changing the reasons your arthritis is flaring up and inflaming your joints. A healthy diet can positively affect arthritis in many ways. It can help you to reduce your symptoms, whether that is through an additional intake in water or adding in the good, healthy proteins and fats into your diet. But it can also just help you to reduce your symptoms in general by adding in extra antioxidants and vitamins as well. A healthy diet obviously will help you with that weight control. That's very important with inflammation. But also two additional things. A good healthy diet can help you with your immune system. It can help to support that system to make sure that you can fight off anything that might be attacking your body. Specifically with those autoimmune forms of arthritis, it's very important that your immune system be strong and healthy. So there are ways that you can talk to your doctor or nutritionist about how to improve your immune system through your diet, as well as protecting from chronic illness. Again, very much like that immune system, anytime you are chronically ill or sick, whether it's with the flu or strep throat or other illnesses, you are also allowing those illnesses to affect all of your joints as well. So finding a way to fight those off in general will help you with your arthritis in the long run. So we have what we consider good and bad diets, and sometimes it's certainly not our fault what type of diet we might be on. Maybe you live a very active lifestyle with children, and it's hard to get home and cook good, healthy meals that are balanced. And other times maybe you travel quite often for work and you're eating in restaurants or hotels. But finding a way at all times to consider what you need to be putting into your diet that is good. Even if it's something simple, if you stop at a drive-through restaurant to get breakfast, finding a way to order the healthier options off the menu. Maybe they're not as efficient, maybe they're not as cheap, but sometimes healthier is going to be better for you, especially when you're looking at your arthritis pain. So finding a way to eat a variety of healthy foods. Simply replacing one thing in your diet with a different vegetable every day is not going to be as beneficial as eating a wide variety of healthy foods as far as fruits and vegetables and whole grains. We've talked about weight several times, but I can't indicate enough how important maintaining a healthy weight is for arthritis inflammation control. Making sure that fats and cholesterols are not fully cut out of your diet, but are eaten in very, very low amounts or in moderation. There are good fats and bad fats out there. So making sure that you understand what type of fats are you eating and what the different levels of fats and cholesterol are. Everything is labeled with a nutritional label. It might take a little bit more time, but it's certainly worth the while to be able to look at it and see what levels you're eating with all of your foods. The same goes for things like sugar, salt, alcohol, carbohydrated drinks, sweetened drinks, sweet teas, things along those lines. Everything should be in very low amounts or in moderation. There are, several research diets out there that show that the high levels of caffeinated drinks are bad for arthritis, but I've also had people tell me that they've drunk coffee for years and have never had issues. So again, figuring out what that level is for having things in your diet in moderation. How much salt in your diet is too much, and when do you begin to retain too much water because you've had too much salt in your diet? Again, a very personal level of what needs to be changed. In addition, you need to make sure that you are consuming your good requirements for vitamins and minerals. This can be a little overwhelming and daunting because there are so many on the market. But again, start with your physician. Start with a nutritionist, or even an over-the-counter pharmacy chat with someone at your local CVS or Walgreens or a GNC health store, and start asking, what's best for you? What type of arthritis pain do you have? What do you think you're low in your diet? And what have the symptoms been to make you think you might be needing an additional vitamin and mineral? But make sure you do your homework first before you add those into your diet. Water is absolutely the most important nutrient that you can find in your diet every single day. Not only does it deliver all the nutrients straight out to the joints where they need to be, but it also gets rid of all those extra toxins in the body, and it flushes the things out of your body that don't need to be there, quite often causing additional pain, inflammation, or just irritation in the body. The general rule of thumb is 48 ounces of water per day, and that seems like a lot, and it really is. But if you consider how many times you sit and drink a cup of coffee, or a can of soda or pop in the middle of the day, or you have a large glass of tea with dinner, if you could replace all of those with small 8-ounce glasses of water, you could easily get your intake in every day. Now remembering, if you're exercising regularly, or if you're on certain medications that require a lot of water, your intake needs might be higher than someone else's. So again, finding a way to manage your intake of water personally each day. My favorite method of doing this is to simply take a very large container of good cold ice water and mark it with a black permanent marker each of the different times during the day when you need to drink your water. And as you've done this throughout the day, you'll see the water level lower to each of the individual lines. And if you've drunk enough water throughout the day, you'll be able to empty that entire container by the end of the evening. Sometimes you might not get all of it in, but even replacing 2 cans of soda a day with 16 ounces of water is going to go a long way just to get you started to make a difference. So as we move through the rest of this webinar, we'll be talking about the 2 different types of foods, things that we call pro-inflammatory foods and anti-inflammatory foods. So the things that might potentially cause inflammation in your arthritis, not saying they all will, because some people have a very high tolerance for certain foods. But then there are also anti-inflammatory foods, foods that may help you fight off your inflammation. And again, just simply adding these foods into your diet does not guarantee that your inflammation will lower, but these foods have been proven to have a good positive effect on most people with arthritis. So again, it's something to try out with a very individual approach. So trying to stay away from those pro-inflammatory foods, trying to remove all of the damaged bad fats from your body, foods that are high on the glycemic index that cause you to have a high blood sugar count, staying away from things like deep fried foods, very, very important on those damaged fats. The healthy fats are things like the omega-3 fatty acids. We'll talk about whole foods and raw food diets, as well as different vitamins and minerals like vitamin D being very, very important to help fight inflammation. So before we get into all of the differences in those anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory foods, I did want to bring to your attention 2 of these different graphics. The one on the left is a graphic that simply determines and divides very easy to see different anti-inflammatory foods like good fatty fishes and nuts, which have those omega-3 fatty acids, the good dark leafy greens and the fresh citrus fruits that have a lot of vitamin C and antioxidants in them, the good oils, but also things like tomatoes. And now this one is a little controversial, and we'll talk a little bit more about the differences in some of the nightshade vegetables and how some people still think that the acidity in those vegetables or fruits can actually hurt your inflammation more. But there is also reverse research that shows that the overpowering vitamins and minerals in those vegetables actually are doing you more good than they are harm. And then obviously at the bottom it shows a very easy graphic to understand with those pro-inflammatory foods. The refined carbohydrates, the lards and butters and fats and oils. Now butter actually is one that we can talk about more. It does have the benefits of being an all-dairy food, but not processed margarines, not processed meats or heavy sweetened sodas. Those are all things that we'll talk about in a little more detail. The image on the right is a book that's an example of several of the recipe books that you can find online today. The anti-inflammation diet is very popular. Several people have written about it, nutritionists and chefs and doctors alike. And there are lots of options that you can look into when you are trying to find your own recipe book. But I bring this one up to simply show you an example of a good book that is written by a qualified author. When you look at these recipe books, make sure to check the back and the front covers for credibility, and make sure that whatever you are attempting in that, as far as the recipe goes, also isn't going to have any side effects or anything that's going to bother your medications or your current diet. So again, even if you pick up a great book from a bookstore that has beautiful recipes and beautiful pictures for anti-inflammation, check with your doctor first. Make sure that it's something that's safe for you to start trying before you make any of your own changes. So I bring again these graphics to just kind of divide this webinar and show you that we're going to start talking a little bit more in detail now about all of these different pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory foods.
Talking about the different pro-inflammatory foods that need to be taken out of the diet or eaten ingested in very small moderation, in very small amounts. Talking about those refined carbohydrates, those bad sugars, and the refined carbohydrates and white breads and other fried foods, French fries, deep fried pickles at restaurants. I went to a restaurant recently where we had deep fried green beans, totally defeating the purpose of those healthy green beans. So trying to avoid frying foods and staying away from those bad fats and oils. Also trying to stay away from and limiting the amount of sodas and sugar-sweetened beverages, whether that's sweet tea or iced coffees or just Coca-Cola and Pepsi. The amounts of sugar in those are very detrimental for inflammation and arthritis pain. The next one, talking about different red meats and processed meats, is another one that often brings up a lot of controversy. Any of the processed meats have always been known to not be on the healthy side of a diet, things like hot dogs, bologna, sausages. The processing and the different preservatives that they use are not healthy and will not help your inflammation. Some people, however, say that a certain amount of red meat is very good for the diet. It's very high in protein, obviously, if you have low protein levels and you need the iron in your diet. But others have said that an excess of red meat will actually affect their arthritis pain in negative ways. So again, that becomes a very case-by-case basis where some individuals may have a certain sensitivity to a food that others don't. So it is certainly not enough to make a general recommendation from the Arthritis Foundation that everyone cut out red meat from their diet. That is certainly not what we're implying, but just that it could be a causative factor in your inflammation and arthritis pain. So if you are monitoring what you eat and keeping an eye on your diet and you do have arthritis pain and inflammation, write down what you've been eating recently. And if red meat comes to the top of the list, it might be a causative agent of your personal inflammation and pain levels. Also talking here about margarine and shortening and lard. Notice butter is not on the list because good natural whole butter is a dairy product, and we'll talk about a myth related to dairy products in just a minute. But those processed forms of those hydrogenated oils, and obviously lard is just fat, animal fat, those add way too much fat to the diet. They are not good for arthritis pain whatsoever. So really trying to find a way, again, to cut out all of those bad fats and only including the good ones in your diet. Which takes us then into foods that help you to fight inflammation, those anti-inflammatory foods. And again, these might not necessarily work for every person. Each individual person's diet may be different. Some people may benefit from having these foods in their diets, while others may have certain sensitivities that don't allow you to process them the correct way. The first one at the top of the list is very controversial: tomatoes and other yellow, orange, and red vegetables. There has long been a myth that different nightshade vegetables actually aggravate arthritis. And nightshade vegetables really are just simply a family that includes things like tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers, and even tobacco in that family. And what the myth revolves around is that people tend to think that there is a chemical involved. It's called solanine, and it actually is not present in all of those foods. That solanine has to be processed in a certain way where it only certainly shows up in certain forms of those vegetables. So when potatoes get too green and start to have a green tint to them, that's an indicator that solanine is present. But it is not present in all vegetables. And with tomatoes specifically, the bottom line is that the high levels of antioxidants and the high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C in these vegetables have a higher benefit to your diet than the risk factor involved with the inflammation. So again, that becomes a personal choice. You know, if someone has told you that chemicals in tomatoes are bad for your arthritis pain, you're certainly welcome to cut those out of your diet. But research will actually show that the vegetables and nutrients in those vegetables are more beneficial to you than not. Moving on to the olive oils, and again, those good fats, you know, there's good fats and bad fats, and anything that is an omega-3 fatty acid has been shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. You can get that by eating certain foods like different types of fish and nuts and beans, but you can also get that in a supplement form and just simply take an omega-3 fatty acid supplement each day. That's very easy to add into your diet. The dark green leafy vegetables are very important. Again, very high in antioxidants, very high in vitamin A's and vitamin D's and vitamin C's. But that only includes things like spinach, kale, collard greens. It does not include iceberg lettuce that is so common in salads that you might get on a salad bar at a restaurant or on your sandwiches or your burgers. That iceberg lettuce does not have the nutritional value of these dark green leafy vegetables. And again, it's very easy to include those in what some people refer to as a raw food diet, but others do need to be processed. Anyone who's ever tried to eat collard greens raw knows that they have a very bitter taste and they're very difficult. So some of these foods would benefit from being cooked or being processed in a certain way, while others could certainly be included in the diet in the raw form. But again, switching over to a whole raw food diet is not always necessarily a good thing because of that excess amount of fiber very quickly entering into your body. If you need a quick snack that is going to be healthy and possibly help you lower your inflammation, walnuts are a great way to grab a handful to be able to snack on them and get the good oils and the good fats in your body, but also the protein that comes from eating those nuts. Very easy to add those into your routine as a snack instead of reaching for something that's unhealthy. Citruses and other fruits are another one that have often been associated with some of the myths that they need to be cut out of the diet. And in truth, there's really no proof out there that they're going to add to your pain in any way. And in reality, vitamin C that comes from all of these citrus fruits like strawberries, blueberries, cherries, oranges, grapefruit, they're actually critical in the formation of your cartilage in some way. Now, obviously, switching to an entire diet of all citrus fruit, again, is not going to be a good thing. But the antioxidant levels that come with that vitamin C in those citrus fruits is very good at helping to fight off the different things in your body that are going to cause your cartilage damage and to cause your inflammation. So again, you know, there is research out there that shows that people who have consumed a lot of vitamin C over a certain amount of time actually had a severe drop in the amount of arthritis pain that they had. So again, that becomes a personal question of, do you like citrus fruits and can you handle the acidity in some of those fruits? Because some people have problems with the acidity from those as well. So you have to balance what your needs are based on what you're capable of adding into your diet. A quick note on the cherries there. You know, I had a question, somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, I really like cherries and I buy them by the jar full. And I said, well, I think you're buying the wrong kind. And they were asking if it was okay to eat the maraschino cherries, which are in a very heavy sugary syrup and are a sweet form of cherry. And the form of cherries that you want to help with your inflammation would be the tart versions of the cherries, the whole fresh cherries that you would find in your produce section. For the chocolate lovers, it has been shown that dark chocolate does have anti-inflammatory properties, again, but it is also very bitter. You know, milk chocolate, the sweetened form, is not going to have the same anti-inflammatory fighting options as the dark chocolate would. So for those of you who need sweet chocolate, it's something you want to try to keep out of your diet. It's not going to help. And then again, touching back on the whole grains, if you, we're certainly not saying you need to cut all carbohydrates out of your diet. Some people do follow a gluten-free diet, and that is something that you can certainly talk with your nutritionist or your doctor or your healthcare provider or your rheumatologist about cutting gluten out of your diet. But if you are going to have gluten and wheats in your diet, you want it to be whole grain. You certainly want to stay away from the processed and refined flours that you'll find in the grocery store, and try to use more of a whole grain flour for any of your breads or bagels or even your pastries and your baking. You want to use a whole grain. Even with your pastas as well. There are several high carbohydrate levels in a lot of the pastas that we can find at the store, but if you buy the whole grain version, it's going to be much healthier for you and might actually help you to fight back against some of your arthritis and inflammation. So moving on to a few of the supplements that are out there, and this is a very tricky area to navigate because there are so many things on the market today, and there are so many commercials about things that you can add to your diet or utilize to help to basically take away your arthritis pain. And a quick note there is, if anything says that it is going to cure your arthritis, it is not something that you want to be considering. You know, there is no cure for arthritis, and certainly something that's going to come over the counter at this point in time is not going to be the answer. You know, the research out there is working towards cures for all forms of arthritis, but there isn't one available today. The best we can do is find a way to manage or control your symptoms. So the Arthritis Foundation has a supplement and vitamin guide. We also have a full drug guide that some of you might be familiar with. Anything that is in this supplement guide is something that the Arthritis Foundation has found to be useful and helpful. But one thing to kind of note with all of these supplements is the FDA doesn't technically have any certain approval levels or safety levels for some of these supplements. So the FDA does regulate things like what ingredients can be included in a supplement or how they can be marketed, but they don't approve them as they do with the full drugs that would be in the drug guide. So again, we ask that you really do your homework and find out, is the supplement you're considering safe for you? Is it safe for you to ingest? Is it safe for you to take with your other medications if you're on any? Do you have any potential allergies? So please make sure you look at each of these supplements and find out if they're really right for you. I did not list everything in that supplement guide. It's obviously a very long and exhaustive list, but I did want to bring a few of them to your attention. Turmeric powder right now is pretty high on the radar list. Several people are talking about the benefits of turmeric as an anti-inflammatory. It can be added into the diet in several ways. I've had people tell me they put it in low-fat peanut butter on a cracker. Some use it as a seasoning and sprinkle it on their salads. It's a very easy supplement or natural powder to buy in its natural form. Fish oil, again, goes back to those omega-3 fatty acids. You can buy that in a very easy form over the counter. And then some things even like flaxseed. You know, flaxseed is one that was new to me until I started to do some research and found out that it is very easy to find in several forms that are easy to put into the diet. You can buy flaxseed as a whole form that you can use, again, to put on your foods or cook with. You can buy it in crackers or even in cereals. You can mix it into your oatmeal or whatever it is that you're eating to be able to get that flaxseed into your diet that will help with the anti-inflammatory properties. So again, I would suggest that anyone who has the chance take a look at this Arthritis Foundation supplement guide. You can request it online, and I'll give you some information later on how to find that. But do your homework before you determine anything that you might change or put into your diet in any way. So let's move on to talking about some of those cure-all diets again. You know, some of those food myths. It's very easy for someone to say, well, I heard about this diet and it's going to fix everything for me, or this supplement is the best on the market because it cures everything. Watch out for those and find out if you need to be asking very specific questions about, is this diet appropriate for me? You know, is it going to work for my age? Again, your medication. And know what your allergies are. You know, some people have different sensitivities to certain foods. So, for example, just because you eat a lot of dairy products, if you have more inflammation and you have more pain, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're lactose intolerant. It just means that you have a sensitivity to those types of foods. So knowing what your own body levels are and what you're capable of taking is very important. And so, you know, for example, in reality with that dairy diet, you know, we have several people who have called in or have sent resources into us saying, we think you should go to an all dairy-free diet. We think you should eliminate all dairy. And in some ways, you know, there are people who say this does work for me because they've eliminated the high-fat versions of the dairy. But the low-fat or the non-fat milks are actually very safe and are very easy for people with arthritis to drink. So why we want you to start thinking about eating healthy now? You know, we don't want you to just simply say, I'm trying to start a diet tomorrow and I'm going to go cold turkey and I'm going to fix everything. But we do want you to consider, how can you start making some changes? You know, will it help to reduce your inflammation? Will it help you to have more energy, allowing you to be more active? And the more active you are, the better you feel, the better your joints are going to feel. So the eating healthy is a snowball effect that's going to help you with your overall health. It's going to lower your chronic illness risks. It's really just going to make you be a more energetic and healthy person. But again, I'm not going to suggest that you start a drastic diet right away. It's certainly something where you need to consider, how can you start slowly changing your diet to be more healthy? Okay. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that we definitely would like you to seek advice from a dietitian or a nutritionist in your area. Talk to your healthcare provider or your rheumatologist. Because there absolutely is a disclaimer with this presentation that everyone is different. Everyone's diets, everyone's body types, everyone's ages, medications are all going to be different, and you're going to be affected differently. So I certainly don't want anyone to just assume that this is a fix or a cure-all for your arthritis, pain, and inflammation, but certainly a great place to start to make sure that you're taking the right steps to help control your arthritis pain. So with that, I would like to lead into where you can find additional information from the Arthritis Foundation. The Arthritis Foundation website, first and foremost, is just very simply arthritis.org, but it has numerous resources that you can find on all of this information today. The myths related to the diets, the supplements, the overall recommendations for pro and anti-inflammatory foods, as well as very specific research related to arthritis and nutrition. So for those of you who are interested in seeing where this research came from, I would highly suggest that you spend some time going to visit the Arthritis Foundation's website and looking around to see what it is you need to learn more about. With that, you're also going to find information on our website that leads you to our basic health and support and community connections resources, which allows you to request free resources be sent to you directly, information on how to locate exercise classes or educational programs in your area and with those communities and connections as well. So you're going to find all this information from the Arthritis Foundation that also explains to you why we do what we do. And the numbers on here, I'm already going to tell you, is interesting, have changed. The estimated right now amount of people in America that have arthritis pain is over 50 million Americans. which is roughly 1 in 5. Just recently, within the past 2 months or so, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, released their most recent data that actually shows that prevalence of arthritis is closer to 1 in 4. So we're looking at a 1 in 4 ratio of someone around you having a form of arthritis in some way. So using all these resources to help to educate both the individuals with arthritis and individuals that don't on how to prevent several forms is very important to us. The 2 most recent resources that I'd like you to consider obtaining, one is the Better Living Toolkit, and you can see the website and phone number here on the screen at betterlivingtoolkit.org. And this is a resource that you can request either online or toll-free through that number that they will customize to the type of arthritis questions you have, and they will send this directly to you free of charge, and absolutely anybody can request one of these. So I would suggest that any of you who have arthritis or even questions about it, go and request one of those as soon as you can. The next one is the Your Exercise Solution, which is an online resource. It's called Yes. And basically what this is a very personalized individual exercise plan. It will let you identify where you have pain in your body, what type of arthritis pain and what joints have limitations or lower range of motion or decreased grip. And it will allow you to select, what is your fitness level that's best for you, what activities would work best with you with those types of arthritis and with those specific joint limitations. So it's going to let you know what you can still be capable of, even though you have arthritis in certain areas of your body. It's also going to go over certain modifications that will let you exercise to maintain that overall level of health. So the exercise part really goes hand in hand with nutrition and diet. The two need to be combined for a good overall controlling effort for your arthritis pain. And all of these resources can be found online again at the resourcefinder.arthritis.org. And this is where you can find local presentations in your area. You can search for local community groups and exercise programs or aquatics programs. Also, just finding professionals in your area that you might want to ask more questions of. And also getting those free resources like the drug guides and the supplement guides. So all of these are great ways for you to learn more about arthritis as a disability and as a disease, and also find ways that you can get free resources to share with others who may need them as well. So with that, I'm going to leave my email up on the screen, and I know we've had some questions come through the chat window, and I will certainly do my best to answer all of those at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Amber. Appreciate your navigating around our technical difficulties there. One question real quick. You had mentioned a nutritionist that might be available to assist. Is that person still going to be available to answer questions in the future?
Yes, absolutely. We do have a dietitian and registered nutritionist that works with us here at the Arthritis Foundation, and she has indicated that if there are any very specific questions, they can certainly email those to me at awolf@arthritis.org, and I will send those to Lori, and she's going to respond back to each of those individuals independently to answer all of their questions.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to put you on mute for just a minute. We're going to be doing our quick poll questions right now. So I'm going to open the first one here for you. And it asks your affiliation, if you could let us know the best choice of these options in terms of what group or organization you might be affiliated with, and make sure you please hit the submit button next to the, you can't just hit the radio button, you have to hit submit in order for those to register. Give you just a couple seconds left. Okay. Our next question asks about the information that was presented today. terms of whether it was appropriate and whether it met your expectations or not. Okay, just a couple more seconds here. We'll be doing our question and answer period in just a minute. And I forgot to share the results the last time. Here's a summary of your comments on that question. Okay, our next question asks about the technology that was employed today. Now, obviously, we had some issues, so feel free to mark that. And also, if you have any specific comments apart from our obvious audio problems, we'd appreciate you entering those into the chat window. And also, still, if you have other questions about the presentation, you can still feel free to enter those into the chat window also. We'll be answering those in just a minute. Okay, just a few more seconds on that. Looks like someone's still in progress. Okay, we're going to close that one. It's going to make me wait a few seconds. Okay. You can see results from that. And our final question coming up here asks if you would attend another session in this series based on today's session. We will have one more poll question after the question and answer period is over, if you would like to make any specific comments. Obviously, you can't write anything into these poll questions, but that one, after we're finished with the question and answer period, will allow you to make any additional comments. So just a couple more seconds there, and we'll close that poll. Okay. And again, thank you for your input on that. I will save those results, and I'm going to turn things over to Cliff Raz, who's going to be leading our question and answer period. I will pass him the ball and unmute Amber, and you can take it from there.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so just as Paul had mentioned, if you have any questions that you want to ask during this time, that's totally fine. Go ahead and put it in the chat window. With our first question, Amber, How do you teach about the glycemic index? It can be very confusing to consumers since many fruits fall high in this index.
Okay, well, that's a great question. And again, that would be one of those times when I would say certainly have someone talk to a local nutritionist or to a dietitian, because it is very difficult. I remember in some of the classes, even in school, we were learning about the differences in cholesterols and high fats. And with the glycemic index, what it is it's basically a system that ranks foods on a scale from 1 to 100 based on how they affect the different blood sugar levels in the body. And especially with arthritis, arthritis and diabetes do have a certain comorbidity, and they tend to go together. So that glycemic index is something that you want to be very considerate of, because some things have a very high level and some things have a very low level. So, for example, as you reach a certain level of carbohydrates, your blood sugar levels are then going to be measured at a certain rate to find out how has that amount of carbohydrates affected your blood sugar levels. And, with the differences, again, with diabetes and things being either low or medium or high, it's going to affect your overall body and your blood sugar levels as well. So it's not just, inflammation that's an issue there, but you want to be able to watch out for those sugar levels and those carbohydrates specifically. So, there are certain foods that are on the list as far as things that have a very high glycemic index. Potatoes are definitely one of them because of that high starch level and carbohydrates. And then some things that are at the very low end. One thing that you tend to hear is that those bright colored fruits and vegetables are the healthiest. And they are, because they have good high levels of antioxidants and vitamins, but they're also very low on the glycemic index. So things that are brightly colored, like the collard greens and avocados, asparagus, bell peppers, anything that's very, very bright in color is going to be on the good end. Those flax seeds are on the very low end of the glycemic index, and the different oils that comes from the meats and the fishes that we talked about. So really it's just finding a way to avoid foods that are very high or towards the higher end of that glycemic index with carbohydrates. So staying away from potatoes, corn, sweet potatoes, things like that, and obviously the refined sugars. So the glycemic index, it's hard to teach a person very quickly. It's certainly something that they would have to learn to monitor on their own, keep lists of foods that come into each of those different categories so they know what it's going to do to their blood sugar levels with those carbohydrates.
Okay, the next question. There are other darker lettuces such as romaine or red leaf lettuce. Are these lettuces the equivalent of iceberg lettuce?
No, they are much higher on the nutritional scale. I just simply didn't list every form. The red cabbage lettuces, the romaines, kale is also included on that list as being one of the bright colored lettuces that have the high antioxidants. They also are very rich in things like vitamin K. The real dark reds, like the red cabbage lettuce, also has different properties that are anti-inflammatory that are much like the red fruit, like strawberries and raspberries. They have an anthocyanin in them that's very healthy. So anything, again, that is brightly colored in those fruits and vegetables is generally going to be fairly healthy. That iceberg lettuce just comes in very, very low on the list, a very low nutritional value. It is more water-based than anything, much like celery would be. And those are also going to add quite a bit of, the celery is adding a lot of fibrous material to your diet as well. So the romaine lettuce and the red lettuce are also very healthy, maybe not as nutrient-rich as the really dark kales and collard greens, but they're certainly good as well.
Okay, one question. Will we be able to print this PowerPoint presentation? And the answer to that is yes, you will be able to. We will post it on the website. Next question, or question/comment. Some supplements have a USP rating. Something about testing for purity?
Well, USP rating is very interesting. It is a voluntary program, and basically, we talked about how the FDA regulates certain ingredients in supplements and it regulates the marketing, but it doesn't test for safety. And that's a very big problem, for consumers. USP, the group that runs that, it's the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Convention, and what they have done is they have created a voluntary program where the creators of these dietary supplements, dietary different drugs that they're basically creating, they can go through their own testing because they're not subject to those same regulations as normal drugs would be. And basically, if you see something that has a USP verified mark, what that means is that the ingredients listed on the label are correct. They have been verified. They are at the proper strength and amounts, and there's no toxicity level there. It doesn't contain any contaminants. But really also that it's made according to, the FDA's management practices. So it's created in the same way, but it still has not been tested for a certain safety level. So again, the USP is basically just kind of providing peace of mind to people, saying that it has went through another level of criteria to make sure that it is as safe as possible without being tested for that safety.
Okay, and then our last question, unless any others come in. You had mentioned dairy before, and you stated that you would cover that more in depth. Will you please, in particular, yogurt?
Well, we know that yogurt has great benefits for health because it has the good bacteria that are needed. Greek yogurt is certainly making a huge presence right now in the market and in the dairy aisle. Really, with all of the dairy foods, we know that the different calcium levels are going to be very important because obviously if the bones surrounding joints are weak, for example, someone who might have osteoporosis, then those joints themselves are going to be weak. So, those levels of calcium are very, very important in the diet. So cutting out the different dairy products is not a good idea. Whether you choose to use yogurt or, low-fat milk or low-fat cheeses really is a personal choice. It's not something that says you have to include it in your diet, but it's also not something that says you have to cut it out of your diet.
All right. Well, that's the end of all of the questions that have come in. So I will go ahead and give the ball back to Paul.
Okay, thank you very much, Cliff and Amber. I did see one hand raised by Riddy, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose or accidentally, but I will unmute your microphone in case you do have a verbal question to ask. Okay, it appears not. So that was okay. Thank you for verifying that. No problem. I'm going to check one more thing on our Q&A. Okay, it looks like we're okay with that. Let's see if there was one more chat. Okay. I will open the final poll question in case you have extra comments. And I will mention that our next planned webinar is for June. I do not have a specific date at this point, but the anticipated topic of that is technologies to assist people that have some type of visual impairment, and will be brought to us by our partners at Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, who specialize in visual impairments and technologies for those with visual impairments. So again, I will, as I leave, I will be opening the comment question and leaving that open for several minutes if you'd like to make a comment. And otherwise, we thank you again for participating today and hope you'll join us again. Have a good afternoon.